The dawn broke over the jagged peaks, spilling light like molten gold across the rocky slopes. Nokos Harper climbed the mountains with the stubborn persistence of a man driven by a longing he could not name. Every footfall against the stone echoed through the silent valley, a lonely drumbeat that matched the restless rhythm of his heart. His hands, calloused from years of ranch labor, found purchase on sharp rocks, yet the weight of unspoken grief made each step uncertain. He was searching, as he had done countless times, for the precious stone whispered about in old legends, the Kimti Pathar, though the brilliance of its shine mattered less than the promise of purpose it carried. The mountain wind tugged at his coat as he reached a narrow ledge. A loose rock betrayed him. His foot slipped and the world pitched violently. He tumbled, striking his head against jagged stone. Pain flared and then a numbing darkness swallowed him. When he opened his eyes, the world seemed familiar yet utterly alien. He survived, miraculously, yet something vital had been stripped from him. 4 years of life, of love, of laughter and loss, had vanished from his memory. The only fragment that remained, stubborn and unyielding, was a small locket he had given his wife, Leo Tai, on their wedding night 5 years ago. Its presence against his chest burned like a question he could not answer, a thread to a life he no longer remembered. 4 months, or perhaps years, though time had no shape in his mind, Nokos wandered through forests and plains, his steps aimless, guided only by instinct. The scent of pine and damp earth filled his nostrils. The sound of distant rivers and the occasional coyote's howl were the only companions to his solitude. Memories flickered like broken lanterns. A woman's laugh, the softness of small hands, a gift exchanged under starlight. He could not grasp their meaning, but they tugged at him, fragile and persistent. Eventually, the wandering brought him to a small town, a cluster of weathered huts and dusty roads. Here he stayed, unmoored yet surviving, becoming part of the town's quiet rhythm without ever claiming a place in a home of his own. 4 years passed in that haze. Unbeknownst to him, his wife, Leotai Morningstar, had given birth to their twin daughters shortly after his disappearance. She had raised them with care, but fate's cruel hand scattered them during a journey. The girls, now 4 years old, had become lost to her in the wilds of travel, their small hands slipping from her grasp as she searched desperately through the plains. Each day Leiade's hope dimmed, yet she refused to give up, pressing on through wind and sun, her heart heavy but unwavering. One crisp morning, while Nokos gathered firewood near a large stone just outside the town's edge, he noticed 2 small figures seated quietly. They were twin girls, their hair glinting in the early light, one boldly curious, the other shy and cautious. He did not know why his chest tightened, why a nameless pull drew him near. They were not his children, or so he thought, but instinct compelled him forward. Kneeling, he extended his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, they reached out to him. Without thought, without question, he gathered them close, feeling a connection deeper than reason allowed. The girls followed him back to the small hut he had made for himself, settling inside as dust motes danced in shafts of sunlight. Nokos' days fell into quiet rhythm, tending to them, protecting them, loving them in wordless gestures. Their laughter became a balm to his fractured mind, a music he could not place yet could feel coursing through his veins. He was their guardian now, though he did not understand the invisible ties that bound him to them. Meanwhile, Leotai pressed on. Days and nights bled into one another as she followed every possible trail, every whispered rumor of her lost daughters. She traversed rivers and plains, calling their names into the wind, never ceasing, her heart both weary and determined. Her love was a quiet fire, burning steady even as exhaustion threatened to consume her. The moment of convergence arrived one late afternoon. Nokos, gathering firewood near the same stone, glanced up to find the twin girls staring at him with curiosity and delight. At that moment, the sound of distant hooves stirred the air, and a figure appeared over the crest of a ridge. Leotai, weary but relentless, had finally reached the edge of the town. Her eyes searched frantically, scanning each figure, until they fell upon the twins. Relief surged, but she remained cautious, unsure how they would react, unsure if the stranger could be their father. Nokos froze when his gaze caught a glimmer at her throat, the locket. 5 years old, its chain long and delicate, still hanging where he had left it on the night of their wedding. Recognition struck him like lightning, memories rushing back in fragmented waves, the vows, the night of celebration, the warmth of her hands, the birth of their children. His mind, fractured for years, began stitching together the lost pieces. The girls, these small living fragments of the past, were his daughters, though his lips had not yet learned to speak the truth. Leotai approached slowly, fear and hope warring in her chest. she called out softly, gently coaxing the twins toward her. The girls, sensing the familiar voice, ran into her arms without hesitation, leaving Nokos standing frozen, overwhelmed by the tidal wave of recollection. His hands went to his chest, feeling the locket, the tiny metal heart that had survived memory's erasure. The familiar weight, the symbol of a love long tested, unlocked the floodgates. Nokos knelt, bringing himself to her level. Leiade's eyes were wide with wonder, disbelief and relief, and she reached for him, guiding him to remember through soft words, gentle touches, and the presence of the children he had unknowingly nurtured. Tears streamed silently, unburdening years of pain, fear and longing. The twins clung to both of them, their small hands weaving the family back together, stitch by fragile stitch. They embraced without words at first, letting the warmth of presence speak volumes. Nokos traced Leiade's hair and shoulders with reverence, memorizing the shapes his mind had once known but forgotten. She rested her forehead against his chest, the beat of his heart grounding them in the reality of this reclaimed life. The twins' laughter wove through the hut like a gentle wind, tying the past and present together in golden light. Outside, the town and prairie stretched wide and empty, indifferent to the reunion within the small hut. For a moment, the world beyond ceased to exist. Sheriff Dalton and the cautious eyes of the town faded away in significance. Here, in the hush of reunited love, only the bond of family mattered. Nokos and Leotai needed no declarations. Every glance, every careful gesture, every protective movement spoke of enduring devotion. They had survived time, separation and memory's cruel theft, and now the threads of their lives were knotted tightly once again. As the sun began its slow descent, casting amber hues over the prairie, the family sat together outside the hut. The twins chattered about the smallest discoveries, the texture of stones, the way sunlight glanced off leaves, the sudden shimmer of dew on grass. Nokos held one hand while Leotai held the other, the locket gleaming between them as a silent testament to love's persistence. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying fragments of laughter, murmured promises and the soft pulse of life reclaimed. Night settled gently, and fireflies rose like tiny sparks of hope across the grass. Nokos reflected on the mountain where he had lost himself, on the long years of wandering and confusion. Yet, the ache of lost time had transformed into something more enduring. Presence, love, and the fragile perfection of family returned. He was no longer defined by memory alone but by the quiet, steady acts of care and protection that had stitched him back into the world he had lost. Leotai leaned against his shoulder as they watched the twins, now safely entwined in the warmth of parental arms. He closed his eyes, feeling the scent of her hair, the earth beneath them, the soft brush of the children's tiny hands. A slow, grateful smile spread across his face. Life, like the prairie, could stretch endlessly, yet always lead one home. Together, they had reclaimed not just what was lost but a future shimmering with promise. The stars emerged, one by one, over the vast Wild West sky. Nokos, who had wandered lost for years, felt the weight and warmth of home finally settle over him. He knew the future held trials yet unseen, but love, memory and quiet resilience would carry them forward. The twins, giggling softly, curled into their parents' arms, completing the circle that fate had once broken. And as the night deepened around the small hut, Nokos understood the truth that had been waiting for him all along, that love can endure absence, memory can be rekindled, and the patient, gentle bonds of family are stronger than time itself. He looked at Leotai, at the twins, and knew that together they had not only survived but had created a home where heartache was replaced by laughter, and loss by enduring joy. The wind rustled through the tall prairie grasses and Nokos whispered almost to himself, "We are found, finally." And in the quiet glow of their small fire, the family, whole once more, sat embraced under a sky of infinite possibility.